Okay.
When you're preparing your reading for 4-H days, the first thing to consider is the material that you want to present. You have a choice between poetry or prose. When we say prose, we just mean something from a short story or an excerpt from a novel. It needs to be 5 minutes maximum in length. Make sure that it's suitable for your age. If you're in the junior division, then something that's written for a young person to read makes sense. If you're a teenager, then you can read something that's more mature. The difficulty level is something also to consider. If it's really easy to get through, it may not be something that you want to present when you're 16 or 17 years old. But at the same time, something that's really difficult might not be the best choice either. Try to find something that is unique. Sometimes we hear the same poem 3 or 4 times in one day. So try to find something that not everybody else has chosen as well. If it's something that everybody's favorite poem, like, for instance, The Road Not Taken. Great poem, but it's something that a lot of people will choose. So if you're going to do it, make sure that it's done really well. Classics. Classics are great as long as you've, 1, really know it well, and 2, really love it. Don't just choose a classic piece of poetry or prose just to try to impress the judge and impress the audience. Make sure you really love it. The last thing to consider in material is whether, some people ask if it's okay to get something from the internet or from an email forward. There are lots and lots of poems going around in email forwards, things with great lessons, but sometimes they're overused and just really not the best choice. When you do find something from the internet or an email forward, a good tip is to try to find it actually published in some sort of a print document, or try to find the author to make sure that it's something that is more unique instead of just something that we've all read 1,000 times. Those forwards can really get around every month. The next thing to consider is your presentation. You want to start by making sure that you are speaking loud enough for everybody in the room to understand. So volume is very much a key part of your presentation. Next, you want to have plenty of expression in your voice. Make sure that you're not speaking with a monotone. It's really easy sometimes when we're reading to just get through the words. But it's important to try to add some feeling and change the tone of your voice, just like I'm doing now, to add some expression and interest. Next, you want to make sure that you know how to pronounce every word in your reading. If you've just chosen your piece the night before and you're struggling through it and you really haven't read it out loud very many times, you might mispronounce a word, and that's not what you want to do at 4-H days. Articulation just means that you want to speak very clearly, enunciating each part of each word. So make sure that you've got all of your T's and ings and eds at the end of each word pronounced clearly. Eye contact is very important. Very important. You want to make sure that you're making eye contact not just with the judge, but with every person in your audience. So if your parents are there, or your friends and brothers and sisters are there, make sure that you're looking at everybody in the room instead of just the judge. Appearance, of course, is important at everything that we do in 4-H. So make sure that you're dressed nicely, neatly, and clean to make a good impression. The first impression is your appearance, not the way you speak. And kind of an afterthought over here is the rate of your speak. Make sure the rate of your presentation. Make sure that you aren't speaking too quickly or too slowly. Sometimes it's good to vary the rate depending on what the meaning of your message is. And I'll show you an example of some different ways that you can vary the rate and expression in a poem at the end of this. The last thing to consider is your interpretation of this piece. You've got to really study your poem or prose piece so that you understand what the message is and what every line and word is trying to tell your audience. okay? Pay attention to the phrasing and the message or the overall lesson. Why are you sharing this with your audience? What do you want them to get out of it? If you're just reading it, then you're missing the point. Do you want your audience to laugh? Do you want them to learn something? Do you want them to reflect back on their own lives with some sort of a message? Make sure you really understand your piece. The second thing is that you've really got to perform this. This isn't just reading, okay? It's a little bit of a misnomer when we say that this is 4-H Day readings, because we're not just reading aloud like you would in English class or in history class. You're performing this piece. You want your audience really to connect to what you're reading. And then the last thing, the only way that you're going to get to that performance level is if you practice, practice, practice. If you've chosen this piece the night before or the morning of 4-H days, then you're missing out on a lot of important and really useful practice time. So you want to make sure that you take the time to practice in front of the mirror, practice for your parents, practice for your friends, practice for your dog, and make sure that you understand each part of your piece.